the difference between a bachelor's degree and graduate school is with a bachelor's degree, you learn a very general idea of what physics is, and you learn how to solve important problems, and you are very malleable, right? You're very like flexible because you don't know, you know some things, but you don't know like everything about physics. And so companies with a bachelor's degree, companies do want to hire you, but they do hire you at a very low level. But then you work your way up in the company and you become specialized in whatever company that you're at.
Y creo que algo que es bien importante es, ahora que está muy de moda y es un trending topic, la ciencia de datos. Bueno, si alguien además durante sus estudios puede aprender a programar, eso es muy importante. Pero no solamente eso, si puedes comunicar tus ideas en una forma sencilla. Porque cuando estás trabajando en la academia, toda la gente a tu alrededor entiende muy bien los términos de física y las matemáticas, pero cuando estás trabajando fuera de la academia en la industria, no todo el mundo tiene tu misma formación. Entonces es muy importante poder explicar las ideas sin esperar que tu interlocutor tenga tu misma formación.
The skills you learn with a bachelor's even are very applicable to a lot of different jobs in programming, especially with artificial intelligence and big data. Being able to think analytically is important for a lot of different types of jobs, especially in technology. I think a lot of employers are starting to recognize this, and so sometimes even if they don't, one has to explain it to them and basically tell them what it is that one has learned in school and why it's good for them. But more nowadays, employers are aware of this, and it's becoming common knowledge that the physicists are a good source of talent.
Primero, lo que yo hago más específicamente se llama simulación cuántica, que básicamente tomas un sistema de átomos y le metes interacciones con láseres o campos magnéticos, cosas así, y tratas de hacer que esos átomos se comporten como otra cosa diferente. Por ejemplo, como un cristal de un material o como, no sé, el universo expandiéndose. Para mí es como increíble pensar que tengo una nubecita de átomos atrapada en una cámara de vacíos y decir, ok, yo quiero que esto sea un cristal o que sea un agujero negro en el universo. No sé, como el poder tomar este sistema tan sencillo y usarlo para entender cosas mucho más complicadas o inaccesibles para nosotros de estudiar, para mí se me hace así como wow.
No, I think it's the way to study. Studying science is very different from studying like overall classes because of the world. You have like different exercise, different ways to see things, different. So yeah, I think the main thing that I learned in my first year was that how I'm able to study in different ways the same thing, so I can actually learn it. Yeah, I actually learned to program. I didn't know about that much in high school. I didn't learn that, so I was pretty scared of that part of the computer engineering. But I already have worked in different languages and all that in my first year, so that's a skill that I developed throughout the first year.
So having a physics degree really opens the doors to so many possibilities. I think compared to many other well, sometimes, I mean, we agree that, and you see it on all the movies that portray physicists and the TV shows. Physicists, we are a little bit full of ourselves. We're full of ourselves. We believe that we're very, very great. But I think one of the reasons is because the learning physics opens you a way to learn and to think that you don't get in other degrees. What you learn is you learn to learn, and to learn not only in class but by yourself, in books, So a person who finishes a physics degree, very often they have the ability to learn anything else that they want just by doing the work of learning on the books or articles. So they can access many other things that they were not taught in the physics degree. So it opens the doors to many different types of jobs. You can work. I have many of my colleagues from grad school, from undergrad. They're not only work in academia, but they are in medical doctors. They are CEOs. They work at banks. They work at finance. Some of us work with the government, the FDA, the NIH. So it really, the physicists can go almost anywhere. When you look at the results from the grades that, for example, people who study to go to medicine, right, the MCAT, or to go to law school, the LSAT, the highest scores are by physicists. So physicists, a physics degree, even the undergrad, it opens already a lot of doors to go to almost anywhere you want.
Claro. Un poco es que si dices quiero estudiar física, mucha gente relaciona estudiar física con ser profesor de física. Y ser profesor de física no necesariamente lo es todo, ¿no? Un físico puede desempeñarse en muchas cosas, ¿no? Y como en mi caso, yo soy investigadora, además de hacer mi investigación, tengo que dar clases, doy clases, ¿no? Pero no soy un maestro de física en una preparatoria, en una secundaria, ¿no? Nada más, ¿no? Hacemos mucho más que eso. Entonces, creo que es porque no se conoce realmente todo el trabajo que puede hacer un físico. Y sí, algunas veces se menosprecia, se podría menospreciar, porque dicen, bueno, un profesor de física tal vez no gane mucho dinero, ¿no? Pero porque no conocen que los físicos, pues, pueden hacer mucho más, ¿no? Y ganamos bien.
If you go into graduate school, it becomes a little bit different because in graduate school, you start to specialize. So with a master's degree, you can do a general physics master's where you just take classes and you don't necessarily write a dissertation or a thesis, even though that's rare and I think it's a waste. Like, it's super fun to do research, so why not do research? And so in that case, a master's degree, you will get paid a higher rate when you leave your graduate school, when you graduate. And you are a little bit less malleable, meaning you're like less easy to bend and shape to what they want. However, you also have more skills because you've learned more about physics. You've learned how to solve harder problems. You've learned how to do a little bit of project management in your master's degree. And so that makes you a lot more hireable. And then if you go on to your PhD, well, then you become very specific. It's like the opposite of a master's and a bachelor's degree, right? Like you learn all of this physics, and then now you take all of that knowledge that you had, and in your PhD, you really dive in deep to understand one problem, or maybe two or three, but one main problem. And so now your knowledge is really focused. And so you are way less malleable, I would say, right? Because now you have, you think about things a very specific way. However, again, you have way more skills. Like being a PhD, you learn you're basically MacGyver. I don't know if kids today even know who MacGyver is, but he was a PhD physicist who could get himself out of anything. You can build a refrigerator, you can build a car, you can build a lawnmower, you can build a television. Like, you can do anything that you set your mind to. And the beauty of a PhD is that now, no matter what you got your PhD in, you have taught yourself, like the biggest process for me of what a PhD is teaching yourself how you learn and how to teach yourself. So you can teach yourself anything. It'll take time, but you know how to do it, right? And you accessed that during your PhD. And so even though you're less easy to shape in companies, you're very desirable because you do have very specific knowledge and you have this huge skill set. You're a problem solver, you're a project manager, you're a budget person, right? You know how to order things, you know how to find things, you know how to do literature searches, you know how to do independent research. And I think those are skills that every job that I've ever had after my PhD, those things really, really mattered, right? And those things you're not necessarily going to get with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. But that's not to say that you're not hireable with a bachelor's or a master's degree. You still are, but now you're able to, instead of letting the school and the physics itself shape who you become as a physicist, the company and the projects you work on in your job are going to shape who you become as a physicist.